Hello and welcome to another episode of the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show. It is March Madness time. We have brackets in our hands. The NCAA tournament is literally starting in about 15 minutes. As I'm recording this episode, we're going to get the Alabama State versus St. Francis game in Dayton underway here shortly, followed by San Diego State and North Carolina, which is obviously even more intriguing to a lot of people around the country. We're going to be going region by region here on the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show over the next few hours to get everybody all of the information that they need to know ahead of filling out their brackets and when the games really start going on Thursday. So we got a lot of information to get into, and we're going to dive right into it here in the upper left quadrant of your bracket with the South region. Obviously, this region starts with the number one overall seed, Auburn Tigers. Auburn did hold on to that number one overall seed despite losing their final two regular season games, then obviously getting knocked out in the semifinals of the Southeastern Conference tournament as well. But their overall body of work, those 16 quad one wins, kind of still a historic resume despite stumbling three times down the stretch. Coach Bruce Pearl's team was still had built up enough capital to maintain that number one overall seed, and in my opinion, did so. That they were worthy of holding on to that seed. And again, they will play the winner of this evening's game on Tuesday night as I'm recording this, the winner between Alabama State and St. Francis. I don't think there's much sense in talking about that matchup too much, especially when we have a very intriguing matchup here right off the bat. This will be the Lexington regional, which I do find it interesting that Louisville gets to play in Lexington, and especially if they were to advance, I have a feeling that Coach Bruce Pearl is going to be spending a lot of time in the locker room talking about the disrespect that the number one overall seed got from the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee by placing Louisville as an 8 seed in the number one overall seed regional in Lexington, just miles away from Louisville. But that's a separate topic for a separate day. I think you're looking here at two teams that have faced significant injury issues this season. Obviously, with Case and Pryor at Louisville being out for the season after just 7 or 8 games, and then Pop Isaacs being out after just 7 or 8 games at Creighton. And then also the Blue Jays have dealt with just kind of the ongoing issues and just Mason Miller not being Mason Miller anymore, quite frankly, for the Blue Jays. The Cardinals will get Ryan Smith back, the dead-eye shooter, one of the best shooters in college basketball this season. He will be back for this first-round game against Creighton. I think it'll be interesting to see how the Cardinals are able to handle Ryan Kalkbrenner inside. Not just one of the best defenders in college basketball, but a guy that can score it in the post as well. Does Louisville have the interior strength and size to match up with a guy like that? We will see as that time comes, but I think that will be a very intriguing first round matchup. Then you're talking about one of the games where a lot of people have eyes on these 12-5 upsets, as always, and this is certainly an intriguing one between Michigan and UC San Diego's. UC San Diego's first year of NCAA tournament eligibility after finishing their transition from Division II, and they immediately rattled off a 30-4 overall record. They have the nation's longest active winning streak at 15 games entering the NCAA tournament. They won the Big West Conference regular season with an 18-2 record, and then also backed it up with a Big West Conference tournament win. They're one of the best teams in the country at forcing turnovers, 23.3% defensive turnover rate, fourth in steal rate. Meanwhile, Michigan is one of the best in the country, one of the worst in the country at turning the ball over. They have a 19.8% turnover rate. So will we see a situation here where that plays a big factor in this game? If Michigan turns it over a bunch and you allow the Tritons to get out of it in transition and get some easy buckets, that could go a long way. But to me, the storyline here, quite frankly, is I think Michigan's a little underseeded at the 5. I get it. They finished up 25-9. It's not exactly a gaudy overall record and finished up 14-6 in the Big Ten because they lost their last 3 games, 3 and 4 of their last 6 before going on to win the Big Ten Conference tournament. But to me, I look at it like this. The Wolverines spent the vast majority of this regular season competing at the very top of the Big Ten standings. So did they obviously win the Big Ten? No. But did they have a chance to win the Big Ten essentially until the final week? Yes. And then they turned it around and beat Purdue, Maryland, and Wisconsin on back-to-back-to-back nights to win the Big Ten tournament. And those losses they had down the stretch were to Illinois, um, Maryland, and Michigan State. So it's not like they were losing to bad teams down the stretch. They were losing to really, really good teams, teams that are seated either right around them or ahead of them in the NCAA tournament. And then they went and got revenge on Wisconsin or on Maryland, excuse me, in the semifinals. Went on to beat Wisconsin in the championship game, which was a 3 seed. They beat Purdue along the way, which is a 4 seed. Maryland is a 4 seed as well. And with Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden in the front court, I think that's going to be a really tough matchup for UC San Diego in this one. And I just think that this Michigan team is better, quite frankly, than a 5 seed. And that's going to make it tough for this to be the 12-5 upset that everybody kind of wants it to be, because UC San Diego is a good story. Everybody likes picking 12s over 5s. I just think that Michigan is too good of a 5 seed to go down here, and especially when you consider, I mean, because they haven't been allowed to. UC San Diego's never played an NCAA tournament before. Generally, it's pretty hard on your first trip to really have your footing and succeed, because it was such a big deal for your team to make it there. You kind of already accomplished your goal if you're UC San Diego. And then also, they didn't play a single power conference team all season long. The closest they came was starting the season with a 5-point loss, which granted was a solid showing at San Diego State. Otherwise, their best win of the season was a 2-point win at Utah State back on December 17th. They also have a win at UC Irvine in conference play, but they have no Ken Pom top 50 win, and they literally did not even lose to a power conference opponent. So I think that they're going to get punched in the mouth a little bit when they, again, see guys like Danny Wolf, see guys like Vlad Golden in this one, and kind of the shock and awe of an NCAA tournament stage with a couple 7-footers that can do the things those guys do. I think that Michigan will be able to roll pretty well in that game. Moving down the bracket to the 4-13 game featuring Texas A&M and Yale. To me, the question mark here is, can Yale handle the chaos that Coach Buzz Williams and the Aggies bring to the basketball court? Yale is excellent at taking care of the ball, and they're also excellent at defensive rebounding, 22nd in the country in defensive rebounding percentage. Now, obviously, that comes from a largely Ivy League type of schedule, and Texas A&M is the best offensive rebounding team in the country. Another thing to watch for in this game is the three-point shooting differential. We know that Texas A&M is not good from beyond the arc, and Yale shoots 38.5% at top 10 mark in all of college basketball. So if those guys are able to win the three-point battle, if they're able to win the turnover battle, and then if they're able to just not get killed on the glass, then I think that you could have a situation here where this becomes a real game, because quite frankly, the Bulldogs have the more skilled basketball players. Do they have the athletes? Do they have the physicality? Are they able to just turn this into a frenetic game in the way that Texas A&M can? No. And I think that would ultimately probably carry the day in this one for the Aggies. But I do think it's a really interesting matchup, because you kind of have a clash of styles and a clash of strengths and weaknesses that match up pretty well if you are the Yale Bulldogs in this game. Moving on to Ole Miss, who will play the winner of the game later this evening between North Carolina and San Diego State. We'll talk about that just in a second. But I think this Ole Miss team is built for potentially making some noise here in March, because they have such a good backcourt that, frankly, a lot of people maybe aren't giving the credit that it deserves nationally. With Sean Padula, you have Jalen Murray, and then Matthew Morrell as well. Those are 3 guys that can create from themselves, that can play make for others, and can really, really shoot it from beyond the arc. All those guys have made um, they've made a ton of threes this year, 78 threes for Sean Padula, 57, 58 or so for Jalen Murray. I think 37 for Matthew Morrell. All those guys are well over 30% shooting, especially Murray and Padula from 3. And I think that when you match that with what they get, like the versatility of a Dre Davis in the front court, obviously Malik D, a guy that can stretch the floor a little bit for them as well from the 5 spot. Jamin Brakefield as well. There's just a lot of pieces here for Coach Chris Beard to work with. Now, with everything being said about that backcourt, they are going to have to play a team that's coming off of a win. And we've seen historically that a lot of times these 11 seed play-in games end up having a little bit of success because they've been able to get their feet wet. They've kind of knocked some of the nerves out already of the March Madness splendor, and they can go and continue that into the round of 64 and beyond. And we're talking about two teams here that I don't think will be shaken up by the splendor of the NCAA tournament, because you have teams that have played in two of the last three NCAA tournament finals in North Carolina and San Diego State. Obviously, a lot of eyes on this North Carolina team because, quite frankly, most people don't believe they should be here at all, and especially with the controversy surrounding their athletic director being the chairman of the NCAA tournament selection committee and everything that came along with that. I think that there'll be a lot of people probably just rooting against them. And we can just get rid of them, move on. It won't really make it right what happened on Selection Sunday, but at least we don't have to worry about hearing like, well, see, no, they actually did deserve it and all that nonsense as they go along. But that'll be an interesting game, and it's certainly a high-profile game for a first four in Dayton matchup between North Carolina and San Diego State. Moving on down the bracket to the 3-14 game between Iowa State and Lipscomb. I've watched this Lipscomb team play in person this season. Also watched them play against Kentucky. They're pretty darn good. They can really, really shoot it from three-point range. They have a couple guards that are just dead eye from beyond the arc. Then they have a big man, Ognisevich, that's really versatile, really, really mobile. He can drive it right. He can post up and has quick footwork, right hand, left shoulder stuff. Faces up a little bit, especially after the mid-range. He could give Iowa State some problems, especially an Iowa State team that's going to be without Kashawn Gilbert, arguably their best player this season. They kind of hid that, quite honestly, going into Selection Sunday. And now we know he's going to be out for the remainder of the tournament. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Lipscomb's going to upset the Cyclones, but this is a 14 seed, certainly the highest rated in KenPom. They're 83rd in KenPom, 25-9 on the season. Did most of their losing in non-conference play, where they played the 69th best non-conference schedule according to KenPom. Obviously, I mentioned them playing Kentucky, but they also played Arkansas, Belmont, Western Kentucky, teams of that nature in the non-conference, and obviously a lot of those away from home as well, but have had a lot of success here down the stretch, winning probably 13 of their last 14 games or something like that, just quickly looking at their schedule, which obviously included winning the ASUN championship. So with Jacob Ognisevich, with what some of their guards can do I think it's possible that this one's certainly really close down to the final minutes? And could you even see an upset if Lipscomb comes out and hits 14 threes? Yes, but I still think that there's enough toughness team in Lipsy and these guys with TJ Otzelberger's squad. I think the Cyclones will find a way to advance. Certainly one of the most intriguing first-round matchups across the whole bracket, in my opinion, is the 7-10 game between Marquette and New Mexico. It's going to be a very up-tempo game. Coach Richard Pitino's squad plays at one of the fastest paces in all of college basketball. They're fourth in the country, according to KenPom, in terms of pace. And they have a lot of names that you could get to know if they win a couple games here in the NCAA tournament. Donovan Dent, if he were to hit the transfer portal, and I always say I don't like talking people into the transfer portal, but let's face it, if he goes into the portal, he'll be one of the most sought after players in the country this offseason. He is that good. He has had an outstanding season for the Lobos, a big reason why they were able to earn a 10 seed, 26-7, winners of the regular season Mountain West title before falling to Boise State in the tournament. But also outside of him, you also have True Washington, Nelly Jr. Joseph, other names that could really catch on if they get hot here. But I'm really going to be backing this Marquette team in the NCAA tournament. You have guys that just quite frankly haven't shot it as well this year as they have in the past, or what we would have expected of them, in Cam Jones and David Joplin. They're not matching their career numbers from three-point range, but you have a group with a ton of continuity. All five of Marquette's starters have started in every single game this season. And as I wear my Kentucky stuff saying that, it makes me almost want to throw up, because that certainly has not been the case for the Wildcats, but just the roster continuity that this Marquette team has. I think that if you have a guy like Cam Jones step up and play like the All-American type of player that we all expect him to be, this could be a team that really, really makes some noise beyond just this game in the NCAA tournament. We'll talk about that in just a second. Last one, we won't spend a whole lot of time talking about the Michigan State Spartans taking on Bryant. Bryant is a little bit of a unique team because they just play so fast. There's a little bit of chaos to their game as well. We talked about Texas A&M earlier, but Coach Phil Martelli Jr. squad that has it's different. There's more offense and even skill based, but there's some chaos to what they do with the way Jace Richardson's playing, the way that Jaden Atkins is playing, and then obviously Coach Tom Izzo in March. I think the Spartans are going to be fine there. So let's step back now, 30,000-foot view of the South region. What is going on here? What are the upsets? We already talked about, I don't love the UC San Diego pick over Michigan. I will not be playing that. Personally, I would advise that you don't play that one. I'm not sure that's the upset to find here. I think if you want to get a little frisky, there's a couple places to look. One, I would look at Yale against Texas A&M because, quite frankly, I think Michigan is going to the Sweet 16 regardless. So you don't really lose a ton in your bracket if you pick the upset over A&M. If you get that one right, huge bonus points for you. But if you lose it and Michigan does move on to the Sweet 16, as I would predict, then it doesn't really hurt you all that much. You just don't want Texas A&M to go on a run. I don't think they're a team capable of going on a run this March. I know there'll be some people that want to pick the UNC San Diego State over Ole Miss, but I talked about that Ole Miss backcourt. I think that they are winners here. Again, another one if you want to go really off the board with Lipscomb over Iowa State, but I just don't really see that happening. And to me, Iowa State is a team that could advance a little ways here. So I would really focus in on that Yale Texas A&M game as your upset pick. And then the other one, projecting this out just one round, and I've talked a lot about on this show, the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show. I've talked a lot about what I think of this Michigan State Spartans team of late. I said it at the end of the year where their final 7 games I thought were as impressive as any 7-game stretch that any team had, or 7-game winning streak that any team had in all of college basketball this season. But I still think that there's some inconsistency, especially in the front court. There's certainly inconsistency when it comes with shooting the three-point shot that I could see Marquette knocking them off in the round of 32 here to advance to the Sweet 16. So if you're asking me for upsets in the South region, I'm looking at Yale over Texas A&M, and then I'm looking at Marquette to advance to the Sweet 16 past Michigan State. Kind of like a dark horse candidate to potentially go maybe Elite Eight, even getting crazy Final Four. I would still mention Marquette because this is a team. Let's not forget Marquette was 18-3 and 9-1 at one point, and we were talking about them being a 2 seed. There's people talking about them being a national championship contender with the way that Cam Jones and that group was playing at that point, and then especially from that point on, like let's look at their losses after going 18-3, 9-1. Now, yeah, did we kind of buy into some fool's gold as I say this? Probably a little bit. We got a little excited about their record and the way they were playing. But since then, they lost to UConn, 2-time defending national champions, at St. John's, at Creighton, at Villanova, at UConn again, St. John's in overtime, and then St. John's in the tournament. So it's not like they've lost to bad teams. All of a sudden, they've fallen, quite frankly, from like a 2 seed to a 7 seed. That's why I value them a little bit higher here, and I think they could go on a run. And then everything I said about Michigan still stands true for a lot of those same reasons. I think that Michigan and Marquette are some dark horse candidates. If you really want to get crazy with your bracket and push somebody a little further on, I would look at those teams. However, if we're filling out our brackets, if you're picking a team to go to the Final Four out of this South Regional, I know they've stumbled some of late, but Auburn is still Auburn. What they did this year, it all still happened. Janai Broome is still quite arguably the National Player of the Year. You still have Tahad Pettiford and the backcourt firepower, Denver Jones, all these guys, all these pieces for Coach Bruce Pearl. This is still the best team in this region, and I do think that the Auburn Tigers will go on to San Antonio and represent the South region. If you have any questions about the South region in particular, or obviously the tournament as everything goes on, please make sure you are following me on Twitter throughout March Madness and beyond. This is the best place to keep up to date with everything that I'm doing. We're going to have a lot of content here on the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show YouTube channel, so please make sure you are subscribed. Give this video a like if you did enjoy this breakdown. Again, follow me on Twitter at BRamseyKSR, and I hope you enjoy March Madness. Thanks for being here.